for all being promptly on time. Are there any changes to the agenda today?
No.
Okay. I believe we do have a comment from the public. Peter Salton is here and just logged on. So Peter, I think you can unmute yourself and have three minutes or so to speak to us. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I wanted to hearken back to the Democratic primary for, and particularly the district attorney election. And I wanted to register a comment about ballot design. That ballot design was horrible. You couldn't find, there were all the candidates for assembly were on one line, and then following those 7, I can't remember if it was 7 or not, there were 2 candidates for district attorney on the same line of the same, of the same ballot, and witnessed by the approximately 2,500 undervotes on that ballot is testament to the fact that it was poorly designed, and that should never happen again in any election, particularly with the voter suppression issues that we're confronted with these days. It was, I mean, I went to early vote. Fortunately, I was the only person in the room, and I had to yell out to the workers, where's the district attorney line? And any comment that I read or heard that this ballot design met the requirements is unavailing to me. It's absolutely inexcusable to design a ballot like that. And I wanted to make sure that everyone in this committee hears it and knows it, and that it never happens again. And I did submit emails, and I want those part of the record. And I want something done about it in the future. It was horrible. We can't have this. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. I think it's good to hear you tell us. We have heard that from other folks. Various constituents, I'm sure, have reached out. Luckily, Steve DeWitt and Elizabeth Cree are both here, so they both heard your their Board of Elections commissioners, so they both heard what you had to say, and I'm sure they're taking note of it. And I agree. I hope that does not happen in the future. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And I guess you can go ahead and mute Peter or Kathy. I don't know how you mute or what. All right. I do not believe we have other comments from the public. I will just say my head is a bit foggy today, so you can help keep me on track, and hopefully I won't completely lose my mind. Okay, so Steve and Elizabeth are here, and we would like to hear from them next. I think in general, we always like whatever updates you want to share, but we would like to hear about how the election, the primary went, and I would also particularly like to hear what kind of preparations you're doing for the November election. So I don't know, either one of you are welcome to go first.
Well, to begin with, I'd just like to respond to Mr. Salton's comment. I probably don't have anything that's going to make him feel any better. We are constrained in how we design our ballots by New York State election law. It spells it right out about how you lay out either a primary ballot or a general election ballot. And following, we did get quite a few comments similar to Mr. Salton's, and I sent the ballot, PDF of the ballot off to the New York State Board of Elections to just find out if I was missing something, and they said that from their standpoint that they felt that the ballot was in compliance with election law, that there were some comments of whether you could put them on different lines, and they said you couldn't put them on different lines because of the way the law is written. There was another comment that somebody made about possibly darkening the lines to separate the races with a darker line. And of course, anybody that's worked with our election management system, and they agreed, the software doesn't allow us to do that. Their main comment was that there were a couple little things with regards to uppercase, lowercase, but they're going to be putting out directives to all the boards because there's a new voter ballot usability protocols that have been put in place on July 1st, and they're going to give us more information about that. But essentially, based on the election law and the software that we use to design the ballots, we did what we could. It's pretty much consistent with every primary ballot that we've designed in the past.
All right. Well, thank you. I think that, yeah, if there's any subtle changes that can be made, or, that's great that you reached out to the state to give them some feedback. We don't generally take questions then from the public, but Peter, I'll go ahead and let you, if you have one other question you want to, and then, yeah.
I understand the law. I understood, Mr. DeWitt, that you said that you had complied with the law in the news that I did read, and I'm fine with that. However, there must be something else that could have been done to do this ballot, and if it requires printing another page, or on the back, or skipping a box instead of just having them all lined up together, something has to be done. This is not acceptable, and I'm going to stand on that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, we definitely all hear you for sure. Steve, did you want to go ahead or Elizabeth, any other updates about the primary?
I can talk. Or you got it, Steve?
Yeah, we certified the primary back in second week of July, and there is a court case where a judge has ordered us to count a few extra ballots that were received 2 days after the election that didn't bear a postmark, but that decision's being appealed by the New York State Board of Elections. So we'll see where it goes. Apparently, this election just doesn't seem to want to quit, but we are moving forward and preparing for the November election, and we're doing just preparing in a lot of different ways, whether it's seeking poll workers or updating our folders and the stuff that we used on election day with our poll workers and getting them ready. We're using this little bit of a quiet time, which is going to end pretty soon, to try to get as much out of the way now so that we'll be able to handle all the requests for ballots that we're likely to get, and be able to run a safe election on election day and early voting. I'm sure Elizabeth probably has something to add here too, if you wanted to.
Sure. We did have a CARE grant, and we actually it was for the whole year for $119,000. We actually used that plus another $45,000 of old grant, the HAVA grant, and now we have no grant money left. So we're trying to work up and see what kind of budget we're going to have, because it sounds like we're going to be doing absentees again at a huge volume for the fall. We talked to the Postal Service about not having postmarks, correct postmarks, or postmarks we could read on the ballots so that we can count them. We didn't have that many. I think it was, what, 17 maybe, Steve?
Yep, that's correct.
And we had 723 ballots that we couldn't count during this last primary. And so we're going to work with the county communications on an educational program so we can let the voters know what mistakes they're making and why we can't count their ballots. One of the main things we ran into is a lot of people were putting notes into their ballot envelopes, and nothing can go into the ballot envelope except the ballot. So the candidates were quite upset, obviously, when ballots couldn't be counted, as Steve and I always are upset when we see that and we open it up. So we're definitely going to have to do some extensive training this fall as well.
Yeah, that's something that I certainly didn't know. I see you, Rich. That's great that you're gonna do some outreach, because I'm sure most voters don't know the various rules. Rich, you have a question, and then if other folks have questions.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. I know that you use chambers for the count in the primary, and I was curious how that worked. And if we're still in a situation where we have to social distance, which I anticipate we will be in November, do you think the chambers would work again for the general election for counting, or do you see some other type of space as better?
The chambers was
Absolutely.
perfect.
We couldn't have, I don't think there's a better spot we could have had. And, we really appreciate the legislature working with us to, make this happen. It worked out very well.
Okay, I have a follow-up, Amanda, if that's okay.
Yep.
Is there anything else we can do or that you'd want from the legislature to help make sure that this election is functioning the way you want it to?
I would say the biggest thing is, unfortunately, we're going to have to come to you for funding. We're not going to have enough funding because because of the volume, we need many, many people helping us in the board. So in order for us to count so quickly, we had 15 people that were working on just counting and working with the scanners. But we had a whole week before that where all of our clerks, voting machine technicians, everybody works on ballots. It's all hands on deck. So the biggest thing is we need support with staff.
Okay, is that something that you can use volunteers, or do you need to, does New York State require you to have paid staff?
Pretty sure they require paid staff.
Ballots.
I'm sorry.
Further.
I think Steve said he thinks they require to be paid staff. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. We could double check it to be sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Okay. Thanks for all you do.
Yeah.
Other questions from committee folks? I was just wondering if you could clarify the process again for the fall. Will people be sent an application? Do they need to apply to get an absentee ballot? How is that working?
Well, currently, they will have to apply. There are a couple of bills. There's one bill that has passed both houses at the state level that are awaiting the governor's signature. One has to deals with classifying COVID-19 as a temporary illness for the purpose of applying for an absentee ballot. That will certainly make it easier for people to, come up with a reason to apply. And as far as for the counting the ballots, they've also passed a law for this year stating that any ballot that is received on a day after the election from the post office shall be considered timely, whether it has a postmark on it or not. And there's some other laws dealing with it, but as far as the applications right now, you technically can't use COVID-19 as an excuse, as a temporary illness. You hopefully will be able to do that shortly. We have, through the State Board of Elections, I know is really letting the governor know that if we're going to be doing what we did during the primary, mailing out absentee ballot applications to every eligible voter and the such, that these decisions ought to be made sooner rather than later, because it just gives people more time to react, and it gives us more time to process the onslaught of ballots and applications.
Right. Makes sense. All right. Well, thank you. Any other questions, folks? All right. Well, thank you, Steve and Elizabeth, for all your work and for keeping us updated. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you again as the months go by here.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So our next report is from assessment, but I don't see Jay here unless he's hiding in someone else's name.
I'm under Dominic.
Oh, you're under Dominic.
There we go.
Oh, there you are. Hi there.
All right, how you doing?
Good. All right. Well, you're up.
Well, thanks for having me here today. I thought I'd start off with a summary of our 2020 assessment roll. We go from July 1 to June 30th, so we're actually starting our 2021 year. But getting back to 2020, you see our assessed value grew about 10%. Don't get too happy. I revalued Cornell University this year. So that's where you saw most of the value increase. That's probably my funnest appraisal question we have. How much is Cornell University worth? How much is Shokoff Stadium? How much is the high-speed accelerator worth? Is that personal property? Is it real property? So I try to do my best when valuing, because I know people like to see, the city is X% exempt or the county is 40% exempt, to kind of throw that number out there. So I try to put a realistic value on Cornell when I get the chance. But the big number to look at is the county tax base this year went up 3.89%, about $315 million. And that's right in our kind of 6-year average of 3.82. This year, we made 8,500 increases in assessment, just under 700 decreases. We added more IDA properties to the exempt roll. So you saw this year we added, I always like to look at, did we add more exemptions or decrease the exemptions for wholly exempt properties? Are we losing tax base or gaining them? This year we added 25 properties, but 8 of those were IDA properties. I think 5 of those were solar array out in Dryden. But the next net change this year was that we lost about 10 million, or net change was $10 million, but it's really about $4.5 million is what the tax base went down. And just looking at what the Alcohol and Drug Council bought, pretty much all of it could be just kind of that one property of more property being tax exempt. This year we held our assessment reviews, all of them virtually. We did our informal assessment reviews in the month of March and April. We did it through phone calls. Normally we give people the option to do so, but this year we forced them to do so. The same with our grievance day, the 4th Tuesday of May. We held all of those through Zoom, which actually went pretty good. We took appointments rather than having a first come, first serve. Our Board of Assessment Review seemed to like it. It was very orderly and everything went smooth, we think. So one thing I always look at, how many parcels came in. So we made 8,700 changes in our informal assessment review. 910 came in. Historically, we're right average. 10.36 came in. Historically, we're at 10.5. For a frame of reference, when you do assessments, you always expect 15% of the people coming in. You plan for 20 and you hope for 10% of those changes. So we're right on that low end. We really should be at about 15%. So that's a good sign, I hope. For our formal grievances, we sent out 1,500 assessment changes. That changed from when we sent it out on March 6th. We had 243 grievances, which is slightly under what our normal number was. One thing I also look at is who came in during our informal assessment reviews. And then if they met with one of our staff, then hopefully they got the information that they need to show why our assessment was correct, or we took into account their information to change their assessment based upon what they brought in. So this year we had 104 parcels that went to grievance after going to an informal assessment review. A lot of those were multi apartments or multi-properties that are owned by one individual or multiple individuals. So that number kind of should be higher if we weren't inundated with 20 parcels owned by the same person. Hopefully everyone has their pens handy. Always in my August meeting when I give this, I can never give the number of small claims assessment reviews and tax certiorari's that have been filed because the deadline to file is 30 days after July 1. So this year we have 7 small claims assessment reviews. These are 1, 2 family owner occupied properties that the state set up I don't want to say a pseudo judicial, but more low key than filing an actual Article 7 proceeding with the Supreme Court. This is kind of filling out an application, filing a $25 fee, and they'll have a small claims hearing officer. So these are a little less formal. The tax certiorari's, those are the full formal actions with the county Supreme Court. This year we have 27 parcels, a little bit higher, but again, in my reading of this, I think a lot of these types of properties kind of jumped the gun on COVID. Our 2020 assessment roll is based upon the July 1 economic conditions of 2019. If anyone predicted COVID on July 1 of 2019, they should be predicting the lottery. I don't think anybody knew the impacts would happen, but most of the properties that filed were student housing and hotels. So there's some kind of uncertainty within those property classes, which we're going to look at for the 2021 assessment roll. But for the 2020 roll, I think they're a little bit ahead of the game. This is kind of when I give you, this is what we're going to do for 2021. I don't know what we're going to do for 2021 yet. One thing we did do is we data collected all of our farms and created plot plans, making sure we had all of the right outbuildings and where they were located. And then we're going to do some residential and commercial projects. Typically, I'll tell you, these are the neighborhoods, these are the towns, but with the delay, with the shutdown and how the real estate market's going, we need a little more time to kind of develop our schedule. Normally by May, I kind of know what we're going to do. This year was a little bit different. So we're still monitoring the market, seeing what we need to do, making sure all properties are assessed at 100%. I also wanted to throw in how easy New York State made the Enhanced STAR program. If you remember a couple of years ago, they made everybody register with New York State in order to have New York State verify that someone's over 65 years of age and their income is under $88,000. Well, they simplified it by giving me 11 reports now that we have to download, juggle. And then when somebody calls up in November saying, why was my star exemption removed? Then we have to go back and say, well, all right, well, in April, they said you were good. But then in May, they said no, but then you appealed to them. So then on report number 8, we actually got you and you were told that you weren't eligible. Luckily, we developed access databases to kind of track all of this, but it's just a pain. You know, just yesterday, we got the star delinquency report. So if you're more than 1 year due on your property taxes, the state removed your star exemption. Because, you know, if they want to get you to pay a bill, it's always better to have the bill be higher. It's always easier to get it. So they'll take away the $600 savings and then you can pay that bill easier, I guess. But that's about it for our 2020. It was a very good normal year up until we hit our informal review. So we'll see where 2021 goes, but we'll see.
All right, great. Yeah, questions from anyone? Actually, I just had one question. You said that the informal reviews were done by Zoom and that went really smoothly. Could people call and have a review if they didn't know how to use Zoom or have access to Zoom? How did that work?
Yeah, we did the informals all through phone because I had 6 appraisers doing them. The grievances, we did offer the ability to call in. We used the Zoom meeting. So when we let the person in, we just knew which phone number they were calling from and knew who they were. So we can issue them right in. I know in the panel that I served on, we only had one issue. And I still don't know what it was. The person couldn't call in. We could see them, but maybe they didn't have a microphone on an old laptop, or I don't know. But we did review that person's properties as well, or the Board of Assessment review did, I should say.
Okay, great. So people had options. That's great.
Correct. Yeah, and it didn't look like we deviated from our prior years of people coming in. So I think the people who wanted to discuss it did discuss it with us.
All right, excellent. I guess if we can move on, you have a couple of resolutions. Let's see, can I get somebody to move resolution establishing county equalization rates? Rich moves. Dan seconds. And I guess you want to tell us anything about this, Jay?
This is just one of our standard yearly reports, and this just says that we value at 100%, and all of our municipalities in the county have that 100% equalization rate.
Great. Any questions about this, folks? All right. We'll do a vote. Dan?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Henry? Henry, you are muted. Are you there?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. And I'm yes. So that is unanimous. All right. The second one is the resolution adoption of regular and supplemental reports of footings, totals, and assessment rolls. Can I have somebody move that? Dan moves, Rich seconds. All right, anything about this, Jay?
This is my favorite resolution because I don't have to change it, and this is the way we've always done it. So this is the way we're going to do it. That's not the answer I like, but this for as long as I could find out. So if anybody ever wanted to go back to 1970 and compile these, I want to keep them in the same format. So been keeping it in the same format. But this is,
Do you think that you're going to get lots of people going back to 1970?
I hope not. People do have a lot of free time on their hands now.
That's true. That's true.
But, you know, the one thing, you know, this is a picture of the final assessment roll that we filed on July 1. That's the only time someone sees that roll. We would have done corrections and changes by the time each school tax bill came around. So this just provides that snapshot in time of what we filed on July 1.
All right, questions on this one? All right, let's go ahead and vote. Dan?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
And I'm yes. So that passes. Thank you all. And is there anything else from you, Jay? All right, it's good to see you. Thanks for stopping by.
I'm going to go back to my corner here in the EOC. I feel odd being over here. This is Frank's seat. So.
All right, well, thank you. Thanks for all you're doing. All right, moving right along. I know Mike Sigler has to leave a bit early, so hopefully we'll get to anything you're interested in, Mike.
All interesting, all of it.
It's all interesting. All right, so we wanted to have just an overview and a little bit of discussion and some clarification about the Code of Ethics. And thank you to Dan for bringing this up, and to Jonathan for offering to give us some advice and thoughts about it. I think that it was in your agenda to read the Code of Ethics, and Jonathan had clarified with me that, and Kathy, thank you also, that the Code of Ethics is our local county law, and it also serves as our policy. It also spells out the Ethics Advisory Board, and Rich is our chair of that board. So I was hoping that both Jonathan and Rich Jonathan could give a little update, or not update, but a little background on the Code of Ethics, and then Rich could give us a little bit of update on the board and what the board is up to. So Jonathan, you can go for it.
Sure. As you can see, that's the Code of Ethics that was attached to the agenda. We had one recent change, which was done in 2019. The state was auditing various ethics policies and pointed out that we had inadvertently left some sections out when we redid our Code of Ethics, which I believe was in 2016. So we added those, and those are now part of the Code of Ethics, and was actually only in the past few weeks did we update it on the site, when I realized the site didn't match the amended law. So now they're both up to date. We made major revisions in, I think it was 2016, recommended by the Board of Ethics, which took, I think, 2-3 years going through each section. And there was at that time a state model code, and we, or at least the Board of Ethics, tried to basically model it roughly on the state model code. To be honest, I don't know that it was particularly improved. I think it in some ways got a little more confusing. And we've discussed that at the last Board of Ethics meeting. Rich is now chair, and I believe that there were some minor changes that that the board made, but we were awaiting. Kathy reminds me of this. I had totally forgotten about it. but we were awaiting the report by the state board. Our Board of Ethics didn't want to make changes because then there may be more to be made. However, we've been waiting probably a couple of years or at least a year for that. So, you know, obviously when we have our next Board of Ethics meeting, we'll have to decide whether they want to move forward with that or not. But I do think that the current code could use some fixes, and I'm not sure what more to say about it. It's come up we have had very few complaints or cases, but some of the language I think is confusing.
Okay, and so maybe Rich or both of you, so you said there's some pending changes. Are those substantial changes, or are there small things, or?
My recollection is, go ahead, John.
Oh, go ahead. So like I said, it's been at least a year, maybe two, since they were made. So I haven't seen them. My recollection is that they were minor, but not, you know, but had, I mean, there were a few words here and there, but they made a big difference.
Sure.
So they weren't like a rewrite of the code like we had before. They were tweaks, but I think those tweaks were intended to improve it.
Right.
That's my recollection, but I really haven't seen it for a while.
Right.
My dim recollection as well, that the changes were mainly for clarity and that it would just help in understanding what we intended. And if you'd like, I could talk a little bit about the board, the advisory board.
Yes, definitely. But let me just ask Jonathan, I think you said you think it could use further updates aside from the ones that the board has sort of pending, or?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, I think those solved some of the problems. I do think that there are issues that, you know, the board didn't look at that they may wish to look at. I mean, one of the big things that when we changed it, for example, was covering like which relatives, for example, it would cover, and it greatly expanded the relatives. And I don't think we changed that, but those are some things that the board may want to look at beyond what was done. You know, I think what the board did was clarify, you know, basically what we meant by this provision, but there are some other issues that the board may want to look at and say, well, do we want it to be that broad in this sense? Do we want it to cover these relatives? So like Rich said, it was intended to clarify what was meant, but it's also been, you know, 5-6 years since we looked at it, and maybe there are some other things the board may want to change or recommend changes on.
Okay, got it. Rich, you want to tell us about the board?
Sure. The board, I'm the legislative member on the board. I took over from Dooley, who had been the chair for many years. The rest of the members are community, and we meet at least once a year. And one of the major functions is to receive a report from Jonathan on all the financial disclosures that are submitted by the legislators. We meet in June. With COVID and the delay in getting some of the reports that were due at the end of May, I think, Kathy, we have not yet met. I'm anticipating we're probably going to meet later this month, and we'll do that remotely. But we'll talk about the financial reports. We'll get a report from Jonathan, and we're also charged with hearing ethics complaints if there are any filed. In my time as chair, we have not received any. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, let's see what other questions folks have, or what else you want to talk about in terms of the ethics law. Dan?
Thank you. I did have a couple of questions. So let's see, packet page 12, section 3, standards of conduct, G. It says that a person from whom the county officer or employee has received election campaign contributions during the previous 24 months. My question is, what about going forward? So in other words, someone takes a campaign contribution one day after taking an action? Well, it seems like it's not covered under this law.
I mean, that's probably right. I mean, I think it would have to be dealt with somewhat differently, because at the time the legislator took the action, they would not yet maybe have known that they were going to say get a contribution. So it's hard for, to say that act, I think it would have to be another thing. We'd have to look at, it wouldn't be covered by this provision, but, a prohibition against receiving funds from someone for whom you've done something. But at the time, like, for example, if you were to running for Congress, say, and you were to do something today and then later get a contribution, there's no way you could have known that, at the time you did it. So it really would be would we want to prevent you from getting contributions at that point, which is a different issue, I think, than, your action. Because when you took your action, you did nothing wrong. Because, of course, you didn't know at that time you would get any contribution.
Right. Well, to me, the ethical lapse is exactly the same. So I would like to see that incorporated into the law. In other words, if I do an action that favors, a certain business, and they give me a campaign contribution either one day before that action or one day after, in my opinion, that's the same ethical violation. And I feel like it should be covered.
Yeah, I mean, I think potentially what you're pointing out, Dan, is that someone could have said to somebody else, I'll take this action and you pay me tomorrow, and then I'll get out of, I won't have broken any law.
Correct.
Rich?
I think that's a good point, Dan. And certainly if we're looking at language in the Code of Ethics, we could try to include something about an expectation, or put the time period just basically, you can't accept them for a certain period of time. I don't know. I think that should be discussed further, but good point.
Thank you. Okay, a couple of pages forward. Let's go to packet page 15, political solicitations. I guess, because I'm not sure, what I'm about to bring up is not in here at all. I'm wondering if this is the place it would be. So first of all, if this says a county officer can't induce a subordinate officer or employee to make a contribution. What about an endorsement? Is there a prohibition against a county employee endorsing someone in a county race? Let's start with that question.
I mean, no, and I don't believe there can be. I mean, constitutionally, we have to allow people to endorse candidates. The issue is we can't allow let's say a legislator is running for Congress. We can't allow that legislator to put pressure on or to require people who work for the county, or let's say a department that somebody works for that person, to contribute to them, or maybe to support them even, but you can't prevent people from endorsing candidates, even if they are working for the county.
But could we prohibit a candidate from soliciting the endorsement of an employee?
I would think so. And, I don't see any reason why we couldn't, that would be an improper use of your office to solicit. It runs a fine line. I think you could do that. But, let's say somebody, because we envision the situation where somebody who's, a legislator perhaps putting pressure on someone, who may work for them. But, it could be, someone in facilities who's a cleaner is running and runs into someone, who's in DSS and says, hey, will you vote for me? So it's a fine line there. I think we need to be careful about the wording.
Will you vote for me is different than an endorsement.
Yeah, I think that just maybe one example could be like if Dan is running for Congress and he wants your endorsement, Jonathan, you're a high profile person and Dan has some control over your department, and you could say, sure, I'll give you my endorsement if you give me some extra funds and such and such. I mean,
that's exactly the case where I'm saying it should apply. What we run into is the problem of, let's say a cleaner is running and he asks for Dan's endorsement. Do we want it to apply? Then it gets a little mushy.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Clearly, in the situation that you described, it makes perfect sense.
Okay, well, I would like to see that question considered in a possible revision of this law. And then my last example is similar, but this one actually happened in the last election where a head of an agency in the county who receives money from Tompkins County endorsed someone in the county legislature race. To me, that seems like an ethical violation, but it is not covered in this law. So I would like to see that question considered.
Okay, I mean, obviously it's up to the committee. I talked about that with the county administrator, and clearly it didn't violate any rules. We thought it bad judgment.
Yeah.
Mike Sigler?
I mean, wouldn't it matter a little bit too if the person, I see this happen all the time. I'm endorsing you as a private citizen and not endorsing you as the head of whatever the case may be.
I guess what I would be looking for, and the only thing that could be realistically prohibited is the candidate requesting the endorsement should be prohibited.
Right. Which, that makes sense. I guess if that's not written in, if Rich and Jonathan can add that to their list of things to talk about. Rich?
Happy to have us talk about these things. I'm wondering about challengers who are not yet county employees and possibly never will be. Are they restricted from getting endorsements from county employees or asking for them? How would we enforce that?
I don't think we can enforce that, can we?
Yeah. No, I don't believe we can. We have no authority over them. But it does, I think Rich's point is it kind of raises an issue where, well, my opponent can get his endorsement, but I can't. And maybe there's an unfairness there. It's definitely a matter to be discussed, but it's an interesting issue.
Yeah, we certainly have a bad judgment question. Whether we can put anything into a rule might be difficult. And I'm also, in the back of my head, it's bouncing around. Say if the district attorney is not running again and is a county employee, and another county employee comes to them and says, well, I'm running, would you endorse me? Is that a problem? I don't know.
I don't know.
It does seem like there's some complicated scenarios we'd really have to dance around.
Okay.
Dan, did you have other?
Nope, that was it. Thank you.
All right, other questions or comments? So I guess you'll be able to bring some of these things up, Rich, at the next meeting or the next time you talk about the changes, or?
Absolutely. And Dan, if you wanted to send me an email with your specific questions, I would make sure I covered each one of them.
You got it.
And so then just to clarify, Rich, you guys are meeting sometime soon. You already had some changes. Do you want to come back and bring those changes to the next GO meeting? Do you want to wait until you talk about more things? What do you think?
I would I would think at our next meeting, we could talk about these questions and anything else the other members of the advisory board have. And as soon as we do, we'd be happy to bring it back to GO. I think we'd have just a great discussion. More rules discussions, Amanda.
More rules. Well, you love the rules. All right, thank you. Jonathan, is there anything else you want to tell us about this?
No, but I will say that I did read through all the financial disclosure forms. One or two, I may want to have them add something or not, but I think we could probably go for scheduling the meeting soon.
And did you get them all in, or are there still a couple
No,
missing?
we got them all in.
Okay.
The issue is, is this one complete or did this person?
Right, okay,
That kind of thing, but there's no one who did not respond.
great. Excellent. All right. Thank you all for that. Okay, ready to talk about the rules of the legislature again? So Rich and Dan and I met again. We're getting to be COVID buddies and going over more and more of the rules. But the part that we want to look at again today and move forward to the full legislature is rule number 1 and rule number 2. Oh, and rule number 3, right? Yes. And so I again gave you the document with all the edits that we've made and comments. But I think what we want to do for now, for this time, is to just go through the revised, cleaner version. And there's a couple of policy questions that we need to look at. And I think what makes sense is that we will as a committee vote on these and move forward as one complete clean copy of this to the full legislature. Then the full legislature can kind of talk about these policy questions again if somebody wants to change them. So if you have the clean version, the first question is actually for Jonathan again, which is on packet page 28, where we talk about, this is about the organizational meeting and the temporary chair. And so I think what Dan and Rich and I had added in was that the temporary chair shall be elected by the majority vote of the members present. And Kathy brought up that she wasn't sure if it should be the members present or if it's the majority of the whole. So we weren't sure, Jonathan.
I mean, I suppose it could be either. I mean, if you don't have a majority of the members, I mean, of the whole membership, it could be a trick. Because, it's one thing not to be able to elect the chair, but another thing not to be able to elect the temporary chair, to at least run the meeting. I mean, what would happen in the absence of doing that, I suppose the clerk would continue to run the meeting.
Right.
So I don't really, I mean, I think either is a possibility, but I don't have any problem with it being majority of the members present. I mean, we very rarely have things by the majority of the members present. We almost always have it by the majority of the whole. But it's something of an unusual thing in the sense that, well, what if there really is a controversy about who would be the temporary chair and, not being elected temporary chair. And so maybe it just avoids a potential problem, not very likely problem, but
Right.
I guess I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. So then I'll ask the committee, do folks want to leave it as such, as the vote of the members present, or do we want to change it to majority of the whole? So we'll just, how about raise your hand if you want to leave it as vote of the members present. And Henry, I can't see you, so you'll have to say, but that's 3 people anyway. And I think that we should also leave it as members present. So, all right, so we'll just go with that.
You could put something in there that says Mike Sigler will become temporary chair, you know.
No
in
matter
case
what?
Yeah, I would support something along those lines.
Okay, you did a good job, so, you know.
Mike, we did talk about adding that. Just-
I'm feeling the love, Rich John. I'm feeling the love. Thanks.
Okay, so the next policy question that we need to decide is that whether the vice chair must be elected after the chair vote, or if the vice chair election can proceed even if the chair vote has not worked out, which was one of the issues that we had this past year. So I don't know, Jonathan, is there a correct way we should do it, or is that something we can decide?
Well, I mean, you can decide. I mean, I think Robert's rules would typically be you elect the chair first. And there is a lot of sense to that, in my view, simply because, you know, obviously it could affect the vice chair vote. But I mean, there's no law that says it has to be that way. I mean, obviously you can do what you choose, but
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure there's a but.
Okay. So as it's written now, it says after a chair is elected, a vice chair of the legislature shall be elected. So that is essentially saying that you must do the chair first and then the vice chair. If you agree with that and you would like that to be the policy, please raise your hand. Or speak up if you're Henry. No one is raising their hand. Okay, if you would prefer that we had alternate language that if no chair is elected, the vice chair election may proceed. If you prefer that, raise your hand. Dan prefers that. Rich and Mike and Henry aren't speaking.
Can you repeat that, please?
I prefer to wait.
You prefer to wait?
Yes, sorry, it wasn't clear.
Okay. Mike, the alternate would be that if no chair is elected, the vice chair election may proceed.
I'd prefer to wait as well.
Okay. All right. So, Henry, did you want to chime in on that one?
No.
All right. So we'll wait on that one.
What did waiting mean in this case?
I think they're suggesting we have the full discussion we don't put one idea forward. We have the full discussion with the legislature.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, I was saying we should elect the chair, then the vice chair, that we maintain the order. I think we should decide that and take that to the full legislature to argue about, to disagree with us. Sorry.
All right. Now I'm confused. Let's try it again. If you prefer the language that is currently in there that says after a chair is elected, a vice chair shall be elected, raise your hand. That would be Rich and Mike. Henry,
No.
we need to, okay, you say no. And I'm gonna say yes. And Dan said no. So that is gonna remain in there. Mike, Rich, and I voted to keep that as the language. So that will move forward to the full legislature. And if Dan or Henry wants to propose an amendment to it, you can do that. I think that's how we're doing it. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're keeping this. All right. Next one is at the end of that paragraph on packet page 28 that says that the chair and vice chair shall serve until the subsequent organizational meeting. And this was also a discussion about trying to figure out how long, like it's sort of like a given, like sure that it's the next organizational meeting, but there was some caveats of if people weren't running again or all that sort of thing. So was there, I can't remember what the discussion was going to be, Rich and Dan.
It had been for 1 year. And so
Right.
we worried that because of the situation we had this year, the chair and vice chair would then be serving until February sometime, and we get off cycle.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me.
Actually, I think it said a little more than that. It said she'll serve for 1 year or until the organizational meeting. And that in itself was confusing. It didn't say whichever came first kind of thing. So we didn't know exactly what it meant. So we were choosing one here. That's how I remember the discussion.
I think you might be right, Dan. Yeah.
Okay. Folks okay with that? Questions or comments on leaving it as they shall serve until the subsequent organizational meeting?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
only, I'm not sure this mattered, and I can't remember how we talked about this, but there is the case where someone's the chair and then they don't run again for office. So January 1st, they're not even on the legislature. I don't know if we need to worry about that, but I just thought I'd bring it up here before we kept moving.
Right, we did talk about that. And we dealt with that in the vice chair question. Was it put somewhere else? No, I can't remember.
I mean, maybe we just keep it in our mind as we go forward, and maybe it doesn't matter, but.
Yeah, okay.
My dim recollection is that we also talked about how the organizational meeting is the first meeting that occurs. Kathy chairs, and so the prior chair and vice chair actually don't need to take any action there.
Right. What are you saying?
Or they finish in December, that the last meeting in December is really their last place where
Right.
they have to be acting on
But-
behalf of.
But this is saying they serve until the subsequent organizational meeting. So even that little gap, they wouldn't be running the next meeting, but they still serve.
That's right. If something comes up on December 29th, we need a chair.
Right. Okay.
You would still have a chair December 29th. If something came up on January 2nd, then you wouldn't, if the term expired, because the legislature's term expires December 31st.
Right. Right. So from December 31st until the organizational meeting, if that chair was no longer on the legislature, you could have a gap. And we did talk about that on the next page for the vice chair, but maybe it didn't make it into the discussion about the chair. On packet page 29 at the top. So maybe we just need to add that same sentence in the event that the previous chair is unable to continue serving, the succession list, and we would just use that again. I think that's what we talked about. I'm just not sure it made it in here.
I'm trying to remember, maybe there's a chair section later on about the duties. Maybe we did it then or something. Because we did talk about this. I just don't know where it ended up.
All right, well, I'll
All right.
look at it. I'll go back
Okay.
and look at it again. Okay. All right, so packet page 29. So this sentence about addressing that gap for the vice chair, we couldn't quite remember, Kathy, what that succession list is called. Like, do we want to use the appropriate name for it?
Yes, I can get it from the resolution.
Okay,
And put the correct language in there.
great, thank you. All right, moving on. Further down, this was just a note that we did cut a part of what was in there that I believe is also in the charter. And so we were wanting to also change the charter. And this was the language about how the direction of the chair directs the vice chair. And we found that to be kind of odd and awkward. So we wanted to take that out. I guess my question for Jonathan and Kathy would be, if we do that, how, like, if we have to change the charter, we have to go through that process. Can we change this first with the understanding that we're going to change the charter?
I mean, properly, it would have no effect until the charter's changed, because the charter rules,
Right.
essentially. So if that's something we decide to do, or the legislature wants to do, I mean, you could do them at the same time. You could schedule a public hearing and vote on the change to the charters at the same time and do this change, and adopt the change in the rules at the same time. I doubt there's going to be lots of people from the public wanting to comment on that. So, I think it can all be done relatively shortly, but it would have no effect until the charters change.
Right. So that makes sense. So my question is, should we wait? Because we're going through all of the rules. There may be other things that we want to change and then change the charter. Should we wait and do one big charter change at the end with the understanding that we've changed the rules, but yes, that they won't actually be in effect until then? Does that make sense?
It makes sense if you believe there are other parts of the charter that might change. I mean, obviously, if you read through and look at the section in the charter on the legislature and say, well, some of those things might change through these other rules, then I think it would make sense to hold off and do it all, as one.
Okay. That makes sense. So we will do that. Henry, Mike has left us, but Henry, do you have objection to this cut of this language, or want to discuss it?
No, I do not.
Okay. So that will just, again, be something that I can point out at the legislature. And if somebody else wants to amend to put it back in, then they can do that. All right, doing good. Moving on, page 30. This was just to point out to folks that we added in a section about explicitly explaining executive sessions, and unless we want to take it out, it will be added. So I believe that Dan and Rich and I are all in support of this. Henry, are you in support of this or no?
Does it really make a difference?
No, but I want to know if you care.
Henry, the discussion we had was if New York State changes its rules about executive session, then we'd have to change our rules. But we thought that was okay. But that was the consideration.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Then I think the last thing, and you guys can remind me if I missed something in here, but the last one I have was just also a note that we took out the whole paragraph about legislators being fined for not coming to meetings. And we thought that was a little bit ridiculous, and Jonathan supported us on that. Any other comments on that one? It's great. All right, so that will go forward as well. All right, that's all I had. So Kathy, maybe I'll just check in with you about making sure we have the right changes to send forward. And then we will talk about it with everybody.
Sounds good. Maybe we'll talk tomorrow morning.
Okay. Anything else right now about these rules of the legislature? Rich. Yeah, go ahead.
Amanda, maybe you just want to share where we're at, that we've continued on with the next tranche of rules, and that we'll be doing the same process, just so everybody's on the same page.
What Rich said. So yeah, we've had a couple meetings now to go through Rule 4 and 5. It's taken us a little bit more time on those, and I think we're meeting again in 2 weeks to hopefully try to get through that, and then bring the next set of full edits to the next GO meeting. So Henry, if you're dying to read ahead, you can go over the next couple rules and be prepared with lots of questions.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I do not have a committee chair report. I don't think we have a county administrator or deputy county administrator, unless someone's hiding there with Dominic. Jonathan, do you have anything else for us?
I need to unmute to say no.
Thank you.
Sure.
Drew is here. Do you have anything for us?
I have 3 quick items, if you don't mind. The first one is a bittersweet. We have a person who's done our accounts payable, paying her bills for over 30 years, and she'll be retiring later this month. So
Wow.
working on some staffing changes there, and it's going to be a significant impact to us.
Yeah. Wow.
We
Well,
wish her well.
thanks to her.
Yeah. She's done the same job, God bless her, for 30 years and does it well. So we're very happy. The second item is we're working to continue the audit. Many of the committee members may know there's a special audit meeting on August 19th, 3 p.m. to review the audit financials for 2019 with that committee, with the Budget and Finance Committee. So that's going to happen, and we're wrapping that up. It's been delayed with all the COVID delays, and they're trying to work remotely, and we've worked remotely, so it's been a lot of challenges. And then finally, just a quick report that you've heard before from Greg at ITS about the Kronos Workforce Ready. That's the time and attendance software. We are going live this pay period, so that's taking a lot of our staff time, and things have gone well so far. I think it's going to be a great improvement for every employee at the county once we're fully implemented and once we're going forward. So unless anyone has questions, that's it for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions for Drew? Oh, all right, thanks a lot. And thanks to the staff person who is retiring. Any committee members have anything you want to bring forward? All right, I noticed that our communications director is not on this list of reports this time, and I didn't know if he should be or he doesn't want to be anymore or whatnot. Hi, Dominic.
Hello. I didn't notice that, but I'm happy to give a short report if you'd like.
Sure, yeah, tell us anything you want to tell us.
Yeah, so continuing to work majority of my time on COVID-19 response and communications around that, which has continues to pick up around a lot of public inquiries with questions around schools opening, Cornell opening, and such. So we're continuing to work on that. We did start a census ad campaign, which was a great week to kickstart some of those ads on the Cornell Daily Sun and Ithaca newspapers, as there's probably more articles on there now about their reopening than there have been. So that's been getting really good traffic. We have some TCAT bus ads going up as well. So that's been effective, thanks to the legislature for approving some funds to do that campaign. And there are some other discussions around census and working with some nonprofits on that. Bringing some new members onto the Public Information Advisory Board, particularly some folks who do equity and inclusion work around the county, to start to implement more of that into our communications thinking, which I'm really excited about. And then I've started to work with more departments on their communications plans, and as things come up for them, I've started to be more of a resource to those folks, and I look forward to continuing to do that in the coming months as well. Hoping that eventually COVID slows down so I can spend more time doing some of that.
Right, you're pretty focused, I'm sure, at the moment. Questions for Dominic? Rich?
Yes, on one of the applications, there's an acronym URM, and if you were able to help with that.
On the
application.
The Public Information Advisory Board application?
Yes, yes. I'm a member of an URM.
And to represent a minority.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
I don't know which particular one it was referencing, but yeah, that's probably correct. Thank you, Henry.
Yeah.
Henry, did you have a question?
Yes. No, it was a little surprising to receive that press release yesterday from Cayuga Health, because I had somebody who tried to went to Cayuga Health and was informed about the increased pricing, but the press release hadn't been released yet, or they didn't know about it. Can you tell me about the timing of that?
Yep, that was a release done by Cayuga Health. We reviewed it, but it was sort of up their decision on when to release it. They did so, I want to say, just before 9 a.m. Yesterday, and let their folks know in conjunction with that. If there's anybody in particular that needs a clarification along that, or if they got a mixed message, I'm happy to pass them along to CMC. It got some coverage by the media, but a little bit later in the day, and some of those press release lists don't include the whole public in some way. So it's relying sometimes on the media to get it out quickly.
Yeah, because I didn't see it on the Human Services Coalition listserv, so I didn't know when it had come out. But the person said that they hadn't changed their website yet, but they would like that at 10 o'clock. And they had been told that, the price has gone up, but they had no way of knowing it. So you may want to give some feedback that they may want to, do the press release the day before, or the weekend, or the day before changing the prices, so that people don't get caught in between.
Yeah, that's a good note. I'll encourage that. And the websites have been updated accordingly. They had a few website issues yesterday. We let them know right away. We heard some feedback too on some of the pages not loading or having a few issues with the updated info. But I believe all of that's been changed, as has our website for the county, where a fair amount of people get driven over to the CMC site information.
Yeah, I saw that. It's just that they were told that it had been changed, and there was no proof of it, proof that it had been changed. They didn't have the press release and no one knew. They called the newspapers. The newspapers didn't have it yet either. They didn't know about it.
Yeah,
So-
I'll let CMC know. Yeah, I think having it come out the same day as the policy change was just difficult to communicate. And I'll also add, see if the folks who send out the CMC press releases can add in the human services listserv like we do for legislative highlights, for example. I think that would be really effective. So I'll have them do that.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Dom, I'm glad to see that you're getting some new PIAB members. That's good. Is Larry Roberts still the chair? Yeah, okay. Are they, do you know, I know, is he just filling out Pat's term and then they'll change, or I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I'm just wondering.
So that's the current plan. I don't know the exact channels through which that is managed, but I do know that he's accepted the chair position from being vice chair previously. I think he's planning on.
Okay.
continuing along.
All right, great. Thank you so much. I love seeing Tompkins County on my Facebook and Twitter and try to share stuff, and it makes it easier for me to figure out what to share when it's already up there. So thank you. All right. Speaking of advisory boards, we have the 2 appointments. Anybody have other questions about these? Can I get someone move to approve those? Dan? Rich? All right, let's vote on those. Dan?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
And I'm yes. All right, then let's take the minutes of July 2nd. Somebody move those, please. Rich? Dan, thank you. Any questions or changes on those? All right, let's vote on those. Dan?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I'm yes. Okay, thanks all. Anything anybody needs to bring up? All right, you're all awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kathy.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.